Who remembers being a kid? Ah, those were the days. Back in the early 2000s, when Heelys were the height of couture fashion, when Gantz was about to unveil an online virtual world that would be connected to your real-life plush toy, and the only concern that would plague my mind was as to which Zoo Pal's plate would have the pleasure of holding my refined palate of pasta and chicken nuggies. However, one of my earliest memories growing up was religiously waking up in the mornings, getting out of bed, and rushing downstairs to watch a little show called The New Adventures of Winnie the Pooh. Now, for me personally, Winnie the Pooh as a series is something of a final bastion of a thing I loved as a kid that I still hold sacred as an adult. He's just so wholesome and optimistic and stands as a reminder of a time when life was just much more simple. However, Pooh Bear is only as good as the cast of eccentric but lovable forest friends that surround him, with other memorable characters including the boisterous and affectionate Tigger, the uptight but well-meaning Rabbit, and my personal favorite character as a child, the timid but kind-hearted Piglet. So, during one of my family's routine visits to our local family video, my brother and I wandered into the video game section at the back of the store, and lo and behold, my eyes immediately fell upon this display cover. Piglet's Big Game, an adventure title solely based off my favorite character from my favorite TV show. Suffice it to say, I had to have it. However, upon returning home, booting up my PS2 and inserting the disc, my mind must have gone completely blank, for I have zero memory of the events of this title. However, nearly 20 years later, all that I do remember was that about 30 minutes into the game, something happened that was so terrifying, so distressingly wrong, that I turned off my TV and threw the disc into the garbage. Metaphorically speaking, of course, as I returned the game in exchange for Sly Cooper 3. God! Policia! So with that being my childhood experience with this game, and having since started my own YouTube channel, I've always had it in the back of my mind of returning to this title as a topic of discussion. Revisiting this weird little game for novelty's sake, but also as an opportunity to figure out why Piglet's Big Game scared me so much as a child. However, you, my dear viewer, might remember this title for a completely different reason. Around the same time last year, Piglet's Big Game was rediscovered by the general populace and subsequently went viral for its creepy music and visuals, with people even comparing it to popular horror franchises like Resident Evil and Silent Hill. And trust me, even a year later I am still kicking myself for letting the internet get to this title before I could. But this may have worked out in my favor. For one, I'm not going to lie, it's kind of validating to know that the internet as a whole, comprising mostly of adults, examined this title and agreed that Piglet's Big Game has a lot of horror elements sprinkled in and was an overall eerie experience. And two, due to this game's resurgence in pop culture, we simply have more information about this game's development and even interviews from the individuals who personally worked on this title. Also, not gonna lie, the memes that spawned from this were pretty top tier.
This town is full of heffalumps and woozles. How can you sit there and eat honey?
She said she was fine by herself. She said a bear like me would just slow her down.
Chef's kiss. So, even though the hype train has died down since 2024, I think now is the best time to perform a thorough examination of this game, while also taking the time to look back on the viral phenomenon that surrounded it. And with that, without further ado, this is Piglet's Big Game. Developed by French developer Doki Dinky Studios and published by, Gotham Games, Piglet's Big Game was released in March of 2003 as a movie tie-in game loosely based off Piglet's Big Movie. Now, I remember watching this movie as a child, and in rewatching it for this review, it's still pretty cute. It revolves around Piglet feeling ashamed and embarrassed by how small and clumsy he is, leading him to wander off into the 100-acre woods all by himself. However, Pooh and company, realizing that Piglet has gone missing, band together to form a search party to go looking for him. And sprinkled throughout the movie are these little vignettes of Piglet helping his friends and making a positive impact on their lives, with the moral of the story being that no matter how small you may feel, you can make a big difference in the lives of those who love you. Now, as to how Piglet's Big Game ties into this movie, it doesn't?
Wonderful honey.
Oh, I thought tigers hated honey.
Well, they do to eat, but to stop the itching, oh, there is nothing better.
Both titles were released in North America on the same day, March 21st of 2003. But based off of an interview with the main game designer that was conducted back in November of 2024, Pascal recalls Disney not giving the studio access to the film's content. They just wanted a product to accompany the movie's release, with the only direction given being that the game had to revolve around Piglet, allowing Doki Denki complete creative freedom both in the game's story and level design. The game itself starts off innocently enough, with Piglet strolling through the 100-acre wood, observing his friends as they go about their day. Just then, Piglet spots a shadowy face emerging from a pile of leaves and begins quaking in fear.
A Granosaurus!
As he attempts to flee from the Granosaurus, Piglet accidentally bumps into Christopher Robin, who then picks him up to console him.
Please save me, Christopher Robin!
Don't be afraid, Piglet. There's nothing behind you.
Oh, don't you worry. I am much more concerned with the monster in front of me. Christopher then tells Piglet that the shadowy creature was all in his imagination, and that to overcome his fears, he needs to face them head on and to believe in himself if he wants to become a hero. Piglet, however, is convinced that heroes are supposed to be big and brave, but with how small and timid he is, he believes himself to be inadequate. And with that, downtrodden by his own perceived shortcomings, we see Piglet solemnly wander off into the 100-acre wood, as he reflects on the advice given to him by Christopher Robin. However, at that very same moment, we see Pooh and the rest of the cast drift off into a deep slumber, leading to the beginning of our adventure. As Piglet journeys further into the forest, he comes across a strange and mysterious telescope that, we are told, can allow him to magically enter the dreams of his sleeping friends. Interacting with the telescope, we are then brought to a level select screen where there are a total of 6 dream worlds to explore, each centering around a different character and the problems they need Piglet's help in solving. With the first level taking place in the mind of Winnie the Pooh, we find ourselves in a land covered in candy and sugary sweets. The land of milk and honey, as the Bible so described. As you wander around this environment, you will quickly find out that to progress through each dream world, you will need to collect items to help solve basic puzzles, while also talking to the rest of the cast who will give you hints on where to go next. A good early example of this is when you finally find Pooh, who appears to have gotten himself stuck in what he says is a pool of melted caramel, but to me looks like a great mighty Pooh. Unable to free himself from this sticky situation, he tasks Piglet with finding the solution and freeing him from his predicament. Thankfully, there's a lollipop stick lying on the ground just a couple feet away that we can take back to Pooh, and bada bing, bada boom, that's a free bear. Pooh, however, forever the ungrateful git, begins to absent-mindedly wander off on his own in search of Rabbit, hoping he may know where to find some honey. Unfortunately, he doesn't get too far into his quest before being stopped by a mass of cotton candy blocking the way. But with the help of a nearby spray bottle filled with what appears to be Baja Blast, the cotton candy is quickly melted away, opening up the path leading forward. Pooh, however, still the ungrateful git, is apparently too lazy to actually want to continue looking for Rabbit on his own, so he volunteers us to go in search of the honey in his stead. But not before leaving Piglet with an ominous warning about what foul creatures may be lurking beyond this dark threshold. Unfortunately, Pooh's well-meaning words of caution would be in vain, as nothing could have prepared our little pink protagonist for the horrors that lay in store for him. Yep, that was it. 30 minutes into Piglet's Big Game, that was all it took for 7-year-old me to quit the game and never touch it again nearly 20 years later. Starting the scene from the top, as Piglet enters the room, we are greeted with the heavy, thunderous footsteps of what appears to be a heffalump. Heffalumps, as well as woozles, kinda act like boogeymen in the Winnie the Pooh universe. The Pooh-niverse? Nope. So it makes sense for them to be the bad guys in this game, but with Piglet's small stature and the upward tilted angle, this makes this purple elephant appear all the more threatening. After the cutscene, we are once again given control of Piglet, but since we don't have any known way of defending ourselves, we instinctively run in the opposite direction,
hoping to find a way out.
Unfortunately, it appears that the room is circular with no exits, so we are quickly intercepted by this humongous opponent. However, now that we are in our enemy's line of sight, I notice the X button pop up at the bottom of the screen, and upon clicking that button, a line of dots will appear on the ground leading towards the enemy. After that, we are then transported to... space? With Piglet's back turned towards the Heffalump, who is swiftly approaching us. It is then that a sequence of buttons will appear at the bottom of the screen, and upon completing this series of button prompts, Piglet will then turn around to make a scary face at the Heffalump. This apparently frightens the creature so badly that he then disappears, leaving behind a bottle of what I can only assume to be his life force. However, even though we have bested our enemy and the room is now secure, upon picking the bottle off the ground, we are then treated to this song. Titled Foreboding on YouTube, it is a track that is so haunting, so unnerving, that even as an adult, I feel an overwhelming urge to escape this room as soon as humanly possible. This was also the music featured in the tweet heard around the world, and what attracted people to look at this game after all this time. Unfortunately, upon retreating into the adjacent room that will open up after the fight, we have not quite escaped that oppressive feeling of dread. Upon entering this room, we are greeted with a dark party area that appears to have been completely abandoned to time, with the only sound coming from a broken gramophone pushed into the corner, crackling and hissing while repeating the first few seconds of a once jovial tune. Now, I do have to preface this that as an adult, I am an absolute pussy when it comes to horror games. Like, I can't stress this enough. I tried to play Dead Space a couple years back, and I swear to God, I think I had a near panic attack just trying to watch my husband play it. To make a long story short, I am not a good time to be around. With that being said, however, I can confidently say that as an adult, Piglet's Big Game is not super effective in terms of making me scared of the unknown or fearful of my surroundings. At the end of the day, this is still a game for kids, but in revisiting this title years later, I can sympathize with my childhood self and understand why I had such a visceral reaction during these unsettling moments. Especially since I had never before been exposed to this sort of interactive horror experience prior to playing this game. Remember, this is 2003 we're talking about. This is long before the days of mascot horror titles like Five Nights at Freddy's being marketed towards edgy preteens with the intent of exploiting them for cash. Stop! Going back to the 2024 interview, when asked about the aim of Piglet's Big Game having these horror elements and how intentional some of these moments were, this is what was said. When Disney spoke with the studio about this game, Marc Albinet immediately wanted to make a Resident Evil for kids. I believe he even went to Disney to pitch the idea, and he must have been pretty convincing because they said yes. Since we didn't have access to the movie script, we created a story centered around Piglet. It focused on his lack of self-confidence and the courage he would need to help his friends, who were asleep and trapped in a nightmare. The horror element was tied to these nightmares that the player would need to resolve. Now, what's funny to me about all this is that even though people looking at this title were perplexed as to why Disney would sign off on such a concept for their tie-in movie game, I actually don't find it all that surprising. In rewatching the show, there were a handful of times where they would have these dream sequences that had this surrealist quality to them that could be quite scary to a younger audience. Not to mention, having Piglet as the main protagonist is a great opportunity to explore these creepy nightmare scenarios, given the fact that he is a character constantly defined by his small stature and overbearing anxiety in most of his stories. Hell, now with Winnie the Pooh being in the public domain, this isn't even the first time general audiences have been exposed to the idea that this series could be explicitly linked to horror, with 2023's Winnie the Pooh, Blood and Honey immediately coming to mind. However, I will say that most people would probably agree that Piglet's Big Game is infinitely more unsettling in both atmosphere and suspense. That's not to say that this game is in any way a true horror experience, but is more of a testament to just how ass that Blood and Honey movie really was. Please.
Hello, you.
Now, with that being said, I think it's safe to say that Doki Dinky had the foresight to know that this type of horror gameplay was relatively new territory for this target audience, and to have a game centered around Piglet would naturally attract a younger crowd. Hell, this could even be a child's first ever video game, that poor hypothetical sap. So they would have to prioritize keeping the game easily accessible to that potential demographic. Examples like items that can either be picked up or interacted with are highlighted by these purple sparkles, making them easy to spot. Talking to the residents of the 100 Acre Woods will almost always guarantee you a hint if you ever get stuck on where to go next. Even the combat essentially being centered around quick-time events that gradually scale in complexity is perfect for a child who has never played a video game before and is still learning the basic motor skills involved in playing with a controller. Going back to the combat real quick, Piglet will encounter a number of other foes that he will need to defeat in order to progress. This will also include woozles that inevitably make their appearance, along with an assortment of other baddies with fun gimmicks that add challenge and variety to the gameplay. These include enemies that can obscure your vision, making it harder to see what buttons need to be pushed, to opponents that will hide from being scared, so you will need to time your button presses to when they uncover their face, to even foes that will flip the screen in different directions, which is an absolute pain in the ass. I don't like this guy. Thankfully, if you are not confident that you can finish a button sequence in time, or if the enemy is getting too close for comfort, you can quickly hit the X button to disengage from combat, giving you the opportunity to either flee the area or allowing you to target your opponent at a further distance. However, if you get caught by an enemy, Piglet will run away in terror, leaving the field of battle. There is no traditional health bar in this title, so to show that Piglet is in trouble, he will become visibly distressed, which will start with him shuffling around like a beaten house elf, to him flailing his arms in a panic like a cast member from Scooby-Doo. Now, since this is a game about Piglet, death is not a factor that needs to be worried about. However, if you let Piglet get caught 3 times, you won't get a game over, but this will have him running back to the starting area of whatever level you are currently in. This obviously isn't the worst punishment ever. It's not like a French person is going to climb out of your TV and belt you. But this can still be a bit of an annoyance when having to backtrack to where you were in some of the bigger maps. Now, if you do become frightened, the only way for Piglet to calm down is for you to find one of these Christopher Robin balloons that will play a cutscene of Christopher comforting our timid little protagonist.
Everything will be alright, Piglet. To overcome your fears, you must believe in yourself.
Oh, thank you, Christopher Robin. I feel better already.
Finishing the first level will have us bringing Pooh Bear back a delicious pot of honey, turning this nightmare into a pleasant dream. However, as you travel between the dream worlds of your sleeping friends like a benevolent Freddy Krueger, you will find that the enemies will become more and more difficult to scare. This becomes apparent when traveling into the mind of Rue, when we try to help in retrieving his ball from a tree, only for it to be snatched away by this absolute sex pest. Unfortunately, the door that this thieving woozle runs into is no ordinary obstacle, as it will only allow you passage if you are able to frighten it. And the only way you can do that is by upgrading the scary faces you can make while in battle. This is achieved by purchasing all the brave faces you can find at these carnival booths, spread out across all of the dream worlds, and paying with cookies. These cookies can be found in nearly every level by kicking the stationary objects that decorate these environments, with each object spitting out about 5 cookies. You'll have to be quick to collect them though, because after a few seconds they will be absorbed back into its original object, which can have you kicking it multiple times, so that's a bit irritating.
Oh, you almost had it.
Thankfully, there are only a set number of cookies in each room, and after you collect them all, Piglet will do a little song and dance to celebrate. Going back to the booths, once you have enough cookies to buy a new brave face, the red curtain will be drawn back, revealing another Piglet that will turn around and attempt to scare us with a new expression. Whoever fights monsters should see to it that in the process he does not become a monster himself. When you stare into the abyss replies back. Anyways, with our scary faces fully upgraded, we can make our way back to the door and absolutely destroy its psyche with the power of fear, making him disappear.
Throwing flashbang.
Now, while doing research for this video, I also stumbled across these development documents that were shared during the height of Piglet's resurgent popularity. Listed underneath the game type, they reference 2 titles as inspiration for Piglet's style and tone. These games being the previously mentioned Resident Evil, a classic survival horror game set amidst a zombie apocalypse, and Luigi's Mansion, a horror comedy set inside a haunted house inhabited by mischievous ghosts. These 2 titles are probably the best comparison I can make for the next 2 levels, these being the dream worlds of our friends Owl and Eeyore. Not gonna lie though, Eeyore looks like he might need more help than what we can provide.
Somebody better call an exorcist!
In helping Owl search for his missing memory book, we find ourselves navigating through what appears to be a surreal cosmic library set outside the bounds of time and space. And in assisting Eeyore in bringing back the color inside his dreams, we stumble upon an underground gothic castle with its inhabitants nowhere to be found. Both of these worlds, in my opinion, have some of the most intriguing level design throughout the entire game, and these stages are what most people point at for its horror comparisons. Entering inside these dreams, you will immediately notice this sort of dark, almost isolating atmosphere, which is in stark contrast to the last 2 levels, which had a more cute and wholesome vibe to their design. Not to mention that both of these stages have strangely massive structures decorating the environment. That, coupled with the fixed camera angles set low to the ground, gives a sense that Piglet is in some way an uninvited guest. These are also the levels with some of the weirdest, most off-putting music to be found that are completely out of character for anything Winnie the Pooh related, much less a children's game. Oop, shit, my bad. I must have accidentally slipped in a track from Silent Hill 2's OST by mistake. Happens to the best of us, you know. But while we're on the subject, now, like I said earlier in this video, I'm a bit of a scaredy cat when it comes to playing horror games. However, that doesn't mean I can't love them from afar, and the one horror franchise that continues to capture my imagination is the Silent Hill series. I don't think this has ever come up on my channel, but I'm a huge fan of these titles, and have even forced myself to actually play a couple of these games on my own time. To the best of my ability, that is. Okay. I gotta go make a phone call. Regardless, even though it doesn't show up in the design documents like Resident Evil and Luigi's Mansion, it baffles me just how many similarities there are to Silent Hill as well. Most notably Silent Hill 2, which, for record-keeping purposes, is a 2001 PS2 horror classic that just so happened to have a remake released on October the 8th of 2024, a month prior to Piglet's resurgence in popularity. I, however, am not the only one to make these connections, as can be seen in the memes and popular fan art depicting Piglet as a figure similar to James Sunderland, with Pooh acting as his Maria.
Mary? No, you're not.
Do I look like your girlfriend?
No, my late wife. I can't believe it. You could be her twin. Your face, your voice, just your hair and clothes are different.
My name is Maria. I don't look like a ghost, do I?
Now, even though I find this connection amusing, given the fact that I'm a huge fan of both Silent Hill and Winnie the Pooh, it is my genuine personal belief that without Silent Hill 2 being fresh in the minds of the general populace, Piglet's Big Game would not have seen the spike in popularity that it received. Something of a case of being at the right place at the right time. However, a part of me also believes that due to the popularity of mascot horror, a subgenre whose defining characteristic is the subversion of childhood innocence, that might also have played a part in Piglet's popularity. I think. I'm honestly not 100% sure. I mean, the fact that mascot horror has pretty much dominated the YouTube gaming landscape for the past 10 years, while also attracting a fandom that likes to blend horror and nostalgic childhood media. I mean, it has to have something to do with it, right? It cannot just be me. In any case, we only have 2 levels left to go, and they're alright. The horror elements pretty much stop after Eeyore's dream, with Rabbit's dilemma being that he needs our help in harvesting his carrots, and in Tigger's world, he needs our help in finding his missing stripes. I, however, don't really have anything insightful to add here, so let's just fast forward real quick.
Piglet, it's Tigger's stripes! Catch them all, hurry!
At the end, after you've completed every dream, you can now revisit all of these previous worlds, and while there are still some roaming enemies in each of these levels, the hunter has now become the hunted. Now, when you enter a room, a message will appear reading bravest of them all, and you now have to chase all the enemies down and collect the vial of Ecto Cooler they drop upon disappearing. However, as indicated by the clock in the right-hand corner, you only have a limited amount of time to chase your foe before time runs out, with some of these time limits being pretty tight. Despite everything, it's still you. Alright, with that diversion out of the way, we can now move on to the true final level of this game, the dream world of a small dinghy. Nah, not really. Though, while Piglet was away, the 100-acre woods has since become flooded due to the heavy rains, trapping all of his friends who have now awakened from their dream worlds. However, there is no time to waste, as Piglet must think fast on how he is going to save his friends from the heffalumps and woozles who have now appeared in the real world as well. Though, I shit you not, one of the things you have to do in rescuing Owl is to remind him that he can fly.
Piglet, my dear fellow, do help me!
Oh, Owl, in your book of memories, there's a picture of you fleeing from monsters by flying.
By flying? Oh, how silly of me, of course! Flying! Right you are! I'm coming, Piglet!
After rescuing all of his friends from the heffalumps and woozles, Piglet is once again confronted by the Granosaurus from the beginning of the game, which, not gonna lie, kinda forgot about this dude. Upon defeating the Granosaurus with 3 good scary faces, Piglet has once again saved the day, this time in the real world, with his friends congratulating him for his bravery. Christopher Robin also makes his return, saying that he is proud of Piglet for overcoming his fears and has now become a little hero. And with that, all of the residents of the 100-acre wood sit down to have a picnic, drawing Piglet's Big Game to a close. Well, there you have it. A game that frightened me as a child, I have now conquered as an adult. At the end of the day, even though the combat and gameplay is relatively pretty simple, I genuinely had a great time revisiting this title. With it being a movie tie-in game, I was concerned that this was just going to be a cheap cash grab with not a lot to show for itself. However, what I ended up finding was a game that was made with some serious love and care, while also respecting the young audience it was made for. Now, do I think Piglet's Big Game is somehow a hidden gem in the survival horror genre? No. Even though this title took inspiration from the horror games popular at the time, it was only ever meant to be creepy for young children. If you are an adult, then this will not be effective in that manner. It was hilarious to see the memes comparing Piglet with James Sunderland, I'll give you that, but for the people who are claiming that this title is in any way terrifying or even disturbing, are most likely just taking the piss for YouTube clicks. Now, do I think that this is a game that you should go out of your way to buy and experience yourself? Maybe. I mean, if you have an original GameCube or PS2, if you have a small child you can play with, or if you just have the expendable income, then sure, by all means, don't let me tell you how to live your life. But that's the thing, this game has never been re-released for newer hardware, so the possibility of a family having a console that's well over 20 years old is not the norm. Thankfully, Piglet's Big Game has significantly gone down in price since last year, because there was no way in hell I was going to drop that amount of cash on a game that only took me 7 hours to beat. Hype really do be pushing that bag though. And with that, thank you so much for watching, and thank you so much for your patience. If you like what you see here, please consider leaving a comment and subscribing to the channel. I love seeing your thoughts and feelings on the games that I choose to cover, and if you have any suggestions on what I should play next, feel free to say so down below. Hope to see you all again here soon. Kisses!